let it, we're gonna let it roll. If I can get that moving. Don't you tell me that. There we go. Question 1. An engine has been removed from a high mileage rear wheel drive vehicle and is resealed for several serious oil leaks. After the engine is reinstalled and started, a transmission fluid leak appears from the bell housing area. Technician A says a front pump torque converter seal was probably damaged during the repair. Technician B says the PCV system needs to be checked since it might have caused the engine oil leaks. Who is correct?
It says transmission fluid leak.
Yeah, he wound up with a transmission fluid leak. Wasn't leaking before.
Okay. But they're both not wrong.
The customer complains that her gas pedal sticks at the top of the travel and pops loose as she continues to apply foot pressure on the pedal. This problem is due to probably what? In other words, she puts her foot on there and it's hard as a brick and then it pops loose. And it does this just about every time. Just about every time. People are still right. Question 3. A PL 401 code will probably be due to what?
I don't know if you want for it.
You will when we're done today. PO 401. Most common cause of it usually.
What is this called? What's the code called?
PO 401?
Throw one in the dark there.
A misfiring spark plug will cause the O2 to indicate what? Rich, clean, hot, cool.
We did do research on that.
An air leak between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body will cause what? Long fuel trim to correct to the positive, long fuel trim to correct to the negative, oxygen sensor failure, or canister purge failure.
Talking about the whole thing now, or can I like A, B?
You can actually just abbreviate. Like for this one here, if you're going to put that, you hit LTR2CCP.
Sure, you can do A, B, C, and D.
Couldn't we just put long fuel trim positive?
Now, long fuel trim reading is correct to the positive, long fuel trim reading is correct to the negative, oxygen sensor failure, canister purge failure. That would be like A, B, C, or D. The bullet points went up in there by accident. After undergoing major work in the body shop, a no start condition is being investigated. TCM won't communicate with the scan tool, and there is no reference voltage present at any sensor. Technician A says the body shop may have damaged the PCM while welding body panels. Technician B says power and ground of the PCM should be checked. Whose idea should be pursued first?
Oh.
What would be the smartest thing to do first?
Fastest and cheapest first.
The engine is being investigated for an overheating problem. The engine is started after a 6-hour cold soak and allowed to run for 60 seconds. A hissing sound of escaping pressure is heard when the radiator cap is removed. What does this mean? You let it run 1 minute, pull the radiator cap off, been sitting all night. A loose fuel filler cap will generally set which code?
PO 401.
I knew that one because I had a lady come in there to advance and it pulled up that,
You do the scan tool stuff over there?
it pulled up that code.
Yep.
That's the
I
only reason I
guess.
remember that.
Whenever they come out there and say, can you come and check my, check it, like codes? Okay, like, no problem. She gets her scan tool over
Actually, no, I
there.
pushed off to the next person. Because I'm like on outside.
Variable cam timing was originally used only for what? Variable cam timing, when it was first used,
You didn't tell us this, but okay.
was used only for what? Finally, retarded cam timing and retarded ignition timing can both cause what?
I should be all of the above, but
All right, I'm gonna show you guys some really cool pictures and some stories, but we're gonna back up and do this first. All right, who got this one right?
is it Buzz?
Hey.
That's both, and I'll tell you what the deal is.
No,
When
it's
you
both.
pull the, when you got an engine that hadn't, has been in there a long time, has been running a long time, not leaking transmission fluid or anything, when you pull the, engine out, and it's an automatic, and the torque converter is not being supported by the flywheel, it's gonna sag, right? And if you let it sit there and sag while you're working on the engine and all that kind of stuff, it's gonna distort that seal. So it's always a good idea if you got a high mileage vehicle to go ahead and replace the torque converter seal, right?
Yeah.
Smart. All right, but you also need to find out why that blew every gasket on the engine. The PCV system's not working. If it's clogged up on that side, and it's clogged up on that side, that blow-by pressure will continue to push until it pushes the valve cover gaskets out, it blows all the seals, it's leaking everywhere on the whole doggone engine. And some shops pull motors completely out and reseal them. New gaskets everywhere. Without even checking the PCV system, you're gonna wind up getting the thing back. Seen this happen. All right, gas pedal sticks at the top, throttle body dirty. If it's a doggone electronic throttle body, on some of those, it won't do it on all these. If it's sticking like that, you'll give it the gas and the pedal moves freely and it won't take off, and all of a sudden it pops loose and it surges ahead.
So, which one was it?
The dirty throttle body,
30,000?
It's gonna be a dirty throttle body.
the sticking throttle.
And the throttle body gets dirty, why? Let me ask you this, why does the throttle body get dirty if everything's always going in? Well, the air is always going in through the throttle body. How does the throttle body get dirty on the back of the plate? How's the inside of the manifold get dirty?
I guess overtime, do it.
What? Make it up as you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's what happens. Here's what happens. What happens? So you got your PCV system, right? You got it? All right, cell phone violation, he gets worked up. Anyway, so your PCV system is pulling air through the crankcase and it's getting it from the closure tube on the other side, right? Now, the newer ones that have mass airflow that needs to know about this, it's actually gonna be pulling it out of the airstream between the air filter and the built tube. Okay, when you shut it off, what's floating around in the crankcase?
Yeah.
All this oil steam makes its way up in the intake, settles on everything and condenses.
Lovely.
That's why a lot of the shops will actually have an intake cleaning and all this kind of stuff, But it's like tar. Have you ever seen it on the inside of an intake? And on the back of the throttle body? That's where it comes from, typically. All right, a PO 401 code will probably do what?
That third one. I can't.
Small evaporator.
Clogged EGR passages.
Yes.
I got on around, I guess.
Clogged EGR passages.
You actually told me about this when the last semester I was here, and I'm glad I remembered it.
Yep, there you go. Misfire spark plug will cause the O2 to indicate what?
Lean.
Lean.
Lean. That's very good, y'all. I'm glad y'all remember that. We talked about it a lot of times.
Yeah, we.
A lot of people will say it'll make it read rich, and I'll say why, and they'll say because of the gas, and I'll say it ain't smelling gas. Couldn't care less about gas. All it's looking at is oxygen. on a typical conventional oxygen sensor. Air leak between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body will cause what?
Is it the long-term readings to correct the negative?
Yeah, negative.
Negative.
Why would they do that? If it's not reporting all the air, what's it gonna do? It won't put as much fuel.
Fuel.
That's gonna make it lean, and that's gonna cause it to go to the positive. Because all it's looking at is looking at the O2, and it's saying, I'm not having enough gas here, so I'm gonna have to add more gas because I'm not getting a fair report from the mass airflow sensor, so I don't know how much gas we need, right? After undergoing major work in the body shop, blah, blah, blah.
B.
We had that here one time when we had auto body. This Dodge truck came down here that wouldn't start after they welded some on the body. Now, but, do you replace the PCM first?
No.
No,
take
you
it
don't.
around.
But you know what I did? I got one that was just like the same PCM, but it came off of a Jeep. And I plugged it into that Dodge truck, the scan tool would talk and everything, it was just wonderful. Plugged the old one back in, everything was dead as a hammer, so we had to get him an engine controller for that one.
Is the answer B?
Huh?
What was the answer?
The answer was technician B. The
Okay.
first thing you needed to do was check powers and ground
Okay.
controller.
Sure.
Also, this right here, think about this right here, is gonna be what?
Radiator cap.
Radio cab back and front, no, the third one, that's what I
One
call
of
it.
the head gasket fire rings has been compromised. This is actually pushing compression into the water. And I tell you, I got smacked around one time. Alan Cobb called me and he said, my little Camry is sitting up here at Doc's Country Store and it overheated on me because it has a busted radiator. Because, you know, busted along the top. It's just like that one I don't understand. And I went up there, and you know what it acts like when the head gasket, if we crank it up with the blown head gasket, it's punching, puking water out the cap and stinking and smelling sweet and all that kind of stuff. And so whenever I took it off and I saw all this going on, I thought, man, you're probably blowing the head gasket here. That's what it felt like because it got real hot. Anyway, we pulled it back to the shop, and I was going to show the students, this is what one's like when it's got a blown head gasket, because it had cooled off by that time. And it was just perfect, like there was nothing wrong with it. So we put a radiator in it, and he drove it for another 50,000 miles. And I'd have sworn in a court of law this thing had a blown head gasket. It'll throw you for a loop, you know, so double check everything. A loose fuel filler cap will set what?
Fuel 401.
Fuel 455.
Ah,
We just.
You guys were doing prior learning, going back to the PO 401 code for some reason.
O4,
Memorize all your codes. You're supposed to know what all of them are.
I'm trying.
On the Ford, you need to know the 2-digit codes, the 3-digit codes, and the PO codes.
Can you print all those codes out for us?
Huh?
Can you print all them codes out for us for study guide?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this one thing I done, but a Ford Ranger, it's like a 2011 model, has 600 codes.
Ugh.
Wow.
well,
Keep
that
the
can be
main
thrown
ones
away.
out.
I was kidding when I said memorize them, okay? You know, but what I mean, it's got, I actually looked that up, it's got 600 possible service codes. That's the 2011 Ranger. Yours only has 3 codes because it's a piece of junk. Okay, variable cam timing was ordinarily used only for what?
Is it
A catalyst
445?
monitor.
Knox control.
I got that right.
What's that?
What?
Yeah, I meant through emissions, yeah. No, oxides of nitrogen. So what they did, the EGR valve, it was recirculating exhaust gas. It's an inert gas coming out of the exhaust. It cools the combustion chamber so it doesn't go up 2,500 degrees and cause oxides of nitrogen. Because what's in the air we're breathing?
Oxygen.
And that's 21%. But what else? Nitrogen is 78% of it. So when you put oxygen and nitrogen together and you got to burn, you know, like, I mean, when this chemical reaction takes place, you're heating the nitrogen up, and it's pushing the piston down, what you're doing. That's basically, most people won't think of it like that. But when you heat it up enough, oxygen and nitrogen bind together in all these compounds. That's why they call it NOx, because that little and X can be any number. You know, so the long and short of it is you don't want that. So what they would do, on the old Ford Contours back in 1995, they started closing the exhaust valve early, trapping some exhaust gas in there, and that way they took care of the NOx that way. Retarded cam timing or retarded ignition timing can cause low engine vacuum.
Is it all?
They can also cause a rich air fuel mixture if it has a MAP sensor and late and hard transmission shifts. Why would it cause late and hard transmission shifts?
Because it doesn't know when to turn. when to shift.
Well, 2 reasons. If you've got a vacuum modulator valve that's telling it when to shift, if you're deep into the throttle and the vacuum's low, it's going to shift late and hard. If it ain't got good power, if you're deep into the throttle, if it's got throttle valve, it's going to shift late and hard then too. So if you got an underpowered engine, you're gonna be deeper into the throttle, and it's like you'll have the pressures elevated, and it's gonna go boom, and every time it shifts, it's gonna hit real hard.
So the answer is D, all the above.
All the above.
Yeah.
This is a weak link. Now this in here is not a blatant weak link, but it's like a Chevrolet like you got out there. You see that pipe right there? What is that pipe at the top of the page?
This one, that one?
Yeah.
The
Compressor, it's fully
air
compressed.
conditioner, it's
The suction line for the AC system. What do you typically have on the suction line in the summertime whenever the AC is running?
condensation.
Water.
Condensation, right? Okay, that condensation is gonna drip on the distributor.
Yes,
Is that a problem?
Yeah.
yes.
When you got moisture on the distributor, you got issues. Although one time, when I first came here, I wanted to set a bug on one that had a distributor on it. I pulled the distributor cap off, sprayed a bunch of water into there and put the cap back on. I said, now we're gonna make one. I fired it up and it ran like brand new. When I'm trying to make one not run good, I had a terrible time. They just wanted to stay fixed. I took the Oldsmobile and bent all the spark plug gaps shut on all the plug holes and put the spark plug back in there and it fired up and ran. It didn't run good, but it ran. You know, beat all I ever seen. I hardly was to break a car. All right. Now that's right here. Anybody recognize that?
That's antifreeze.
Nope, that's not antifreeze. That is dye that was put in the engine oil that's actually coming from behind the oil pump on a Toyota Camry engine like that one out there on the stand, okay? So that O-ring behind that oil pump likes to leak. That's why I call this weak link, because that's a weak link in the chain. On those Toyotas, it's got a funky shaped rubber O-ring that goes around that oil pump. And in order to do that, you got to pull the timing belt off, because it's driven by the timing belt. And my son Luke had a car like that, and he came all the way down here from Augusta. Well, he first went up to this place close to where he lived, and they put an oil pan gasket on it and charged him $400 because of this leak. Well, on the way down here, he had to put a quart of oil in it about every 100 miles. And that gasket was leaking really, really bad, but it was running down here and dripping off the oil pan and made them think it was an oil pan gasket leak. Another place that's a real common leak point on the Toyota Camry is behind the cam gear. And all of you that have done the timing belt on the engine out there, that cam gear up there's got a seal behind it. The problem with the seal, what'll happen is it'll run down behind that timing cover and drip off down here, and you won't be able to look at the engine and tell where it's leaking. You just see it dripping in there. So be aware of that. Some of these Chevrolets had this silly, these things right here would wear out. Instead of the replacement was a lot more robust and worked better. But as those little things worn out, what is this I'm looking at right here? Somebody knows what that is.
It's on the electric, I think.
Gas gauge, fuel tank cylinder.
Uh,
You knew that. Come on, man. How many fuel tanks have you got off? 756,212? All right,
about
so,
4 or 5 of them.
but anyway, this thing right here, when these things wear out, the gas gauge goes crazy and you don't know how much gas you got. And that's just something that and somebody's got like a late 90s, early 2000s GM, I said, my gas gauge is going crazy. There's a 95% chance they got a bad sending unit. Now Chevrolet sells just that by itself,
Yeah, I
but
need
it's
one
like
on my truck.
$150.
Yeah, I need one on my truck.
But no, you don't need one. You can just well it under. All right. This is the weak link on some of the older Fords. That's an ignition switch, like they actually on some of the F-150s back in the day, they had a recall on these. And this ignition switch was mounted up on top of the steering column, and it had a couple of little nuts and slotted holes where you could adjust it and all, and it went down over a rod. And you know, whenever on these F-150s, when you're turning the key, you're not actually turning the ignition switch, you're moving a rod that's down there moving the switch. It's on top of the column. That's what this looked like. They were starting to come apart. One day we were out there, and before they had a recall on those trucks, I was in the parts room, and somebody said, "Oh my goodness, look out there in the shop." And Eddie had Eddie Kirkland, this guy that I work with, he had a F-150 up on the front end lift, and he was doing an alignment on it. And that ignition switch had caught fire under there, and it was burning the truck from the inside out. Windshield was already cracked, and there was flames coming up from behind the dash, and that switch right there coming apart is what caused that. And so we had to change them on a whole bunch of trucks. And I tell you what, when you've changed, there was 8 million of those that were recalled, and I think we did most of them at the Ford place where I'd worked it. And you got to the point to where you could change that son of a gun in like 3.5 minutes, you know, you're done, just like that, got it all fixed. Because you've done a lot of them, the more of them you've done, the faster you get.
Put my finger up to you
Yeah,
there.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
Give me a minute. All right. What's wrong with this picture?
Wait,
Is there no disc behind it?
The lug nuts are on backwards. You
Oh.
ever seen that before?
How are you
Alright.
cutting them down
Weak
backwards?
link right here, we got a intake manifold gaskets like to bust and leak on these
How do you
Chevrolets
tighten
and
it
Fords and
like
everybody, they do that. This is what it looks like when you spill toner on your desk, right? Believe it or not, all it took to get it up was a vacuum cleaner. All right, this is busted off valve heads. Oops, wait a minute, that thing went twice.
way too fast.
That was a Kia Cephia that jumped time, and it broke the head off of that valve, and it beat the crud out of the head and the piston and everything else. Had to have a motor put in it. All right, whoops, I went the wrong way. Now this right here, the Montana, this feeds the fuel pump, and it run over the tire there, and it's salt splash, and that was one that messed us up on that thing where when you kicked the gas tank, the light came on. We kicked the gas tank, the light come on, we pull the tank off, had a brand new pump in it. I said, ooh, we need to be looking somewhere else. And when we found this connector, it was all pretty. That's Victor right there on the right, by the way. All right, see that? Plastic. On some of these Oldsmobiles coming on the 3.8s, it breaks. Plastic. Golly, who's gonna put plastic in it sitting there carrying coolant? Get a steel one like that from the parts store. Oil drain plugs. Big problem. If the oil drain plug feels funny when you're pulling it out, or if it gets hard so that you can't turn it out with your fingers, look at it. If those threads are stretched, you better put one on there, or you'll wind up with one like this. Yeah,
You also need to be careful because the bolt might be rounded off too.
that's another thing. That's
Because
that's
I
part of it.
remember I ran into that problem.
Yep. Here's a Bronco story. This guy had wired this thing up like a 302, and it was a 5.8, which is a different firing order. And he thought it had a blown head gasket because of the way it was running and because it was punching water out. That's that Bronco right out here. He gave it to us because of that. And then when I found out how it was
Well,
wired
you
up,
can
he
just
went,
give it to me.
that ain't happening. All right, let me go talk to my division chair and
What we do with our tail?